Godzilla vs. Kong weigh-in. Who will win? Last week we got our first glimpse of the upcoming Godzilla vs. Kong movie, the bout of the century. This is the real rumble in the jungle. Noticeable, Kong has grown in size since we last saw him, and Godzilla seems to not be himself. We saw the first few punches thrown and it's looking like it's going to be a lot more chaos and destruction. So let's get down to it and break down the two fighters' strengths and weaknesses. In the left-hand corner of the ring, that is our planet, coming in at a whopping 199,268,000 pounds, we have Godzilla. He currently stands at an astounding height of 393 feet, with a length of 582 feet. That's one extremely long tail. He comes into this fight with 3 modern-day KOs by, homicide? Annihilation? Whatever. He won. So what are Godzilla's strengths? Why don't we start with his, strength. Strength in combat. Godzilla has a tremendous amount of physical strength and even uses his enormous body mass as a weapon, as seen in 2014's Godzilla, and he can toss enemies about like he did with the Mutos with relative ease. When taking on the female Muto, we see how strong he is, as he pushes her back through Chinatown, driving her through massive buildings and bringing them tumbling down. We also saw his massive strength when he takes the female Muto and lifts her up, even though she is a similar size to him. Later on, he is seen dragging the female Muto with his arms and prying her mouth open to vomit radiation down her throat. He again demonstrates his great strength when he survives being crushed by an enormous building that topples over right on top of him, which he later on is able to lift off himself and continues fighting. He seems to like close quarters fighting and tries to get in close as possible to the enemy and get within their defenses, much like an inside boxer such as Joe Frazier would. This makes sense as he often comes up against enemies with a larger reach than him, so getting up close and personal takes away this advantage. Godzilla is also shown to be able to take a good pummeling, sometimes from 2 opponents at the same time, and continues fighting. When taking on Hedorah, we see him use his brute strength to slam one of Hedorah's heads, face first into the ice on their first encounter, and in their final battle, Godzilla just charges right at him, managing to remain grounded when they collide. Godzilla's tail. Considering the length and the mass of his tail, it ain't nothing to mess with. In 2014's Godzilla, we see him effectively use his tail to smash the flying male Muto to bits, taking it out, along with a nearby building. And this is despite the male Muto building up momentum and flying towards him at full speed. The strength of his tail swing was great enough to kill the male Muto outright, as well as knock over a large skyscraper by accident. When battling Hedorah, he expertly slams down his tail, forming a tripod stance that stabilizes him after taking a face full of gravity beams. In his later battle against Hedorah, Godzilla uses his tail in a sweeping attack to put distance between himself and Hedorah's long necks. In the trailer for the upcoming movie, he is again seen using his tail to knock fighter jets out from the sky in mid-flight. Godzilla's bite. Godzilla has one hell of a bite. We see him use his bite effectively, grabbing the neck of the female Muto in their final showdown and dragging her away from the trawler. He uses a similar attack again against Hedorah in the follow-up movie during their first encounter in the Arctic. Godzilla doesn't hesitate to go straight for the neck, or one of the necks. He chomps off one of Hedorah's heads, and in the last encounter, takes Hedorah's last remaining head for a swing in between his clenched jaw. In the 2-on-1 battle against the Mutos, we see him snapping his jaws at the male Muto on his back, trying to get a hold of the Muto with his teeth. Although this tactic proves unsuccessful, Godzilla's bite clearly is a favored weapon in his arsenal. Later, he does successfully get his teeth into the male Muto, and even manages to swing him around like a ragdoll with his teeth. Godzilla clearly doesn't miss neck day. Amphibious nature. Despite actually being a reptile and not an amphibian, Godzilla spends a significant amount of time in the water, as well as on land. From the Kong vs. Godzilla trailer, we get a glimpse of the first battle on a large carrier ship. Godzilla is at an advantage here, because he can afford to be knocked off the carrier into the sea, and only emerge when it suits him, unlike Kong, who likely needs to stay relatively dry. He can move at great speed and maneuver easily when in the ocean. Atomic ability. Godzilla's atomic power comes from his circulatory system, which is bionuclear in nature. When under attack, a neutron flux is triggered that travels up Godzilla's dorsal fins and results in an explosion of atomic breath. The first time we see Godzilla use it is against the female Muto, who gets hit with the stream of atomic energy, forcing her back away from Godzilla. She tries to bounce back, but is hit with another wave of atomic breath, driving her right into the grounds. Later on, he forces atomic breath down the female Muto's throat, disintegrating her from the inside out. The ability of his atomic breath to disintegrate is seen again in the sequel, when he uses it to destroy the last of Hedorah's heads, leaving behind nothing but ash. In an earlier fight with Hedorah, Godzilla's atomic breath completely wrecks a research station in the Arctic, blowing it to smithereens. The force of that attack is seen again in Godzilla's opening attack on Hedorah, near the Boston Red Sox Stadium. Hedorah is sent flying off his feet as he is struck in the chest by a ray of atomic breath. Thermonuclear pulses. Godzilla can release large amounts of radioactive energy in pulses, and we see an example of this in Godzilla, King of the Monsters, in the final battle with Hedorah. After Mothra's life energy is absorbed, Godzilla starts to heat up with a fiery red glow, causing everything around him to catch alight and begins melting objects around him. It also seems to grant him immunity to Hedorah's gravity beams, providing a defensive barrier from the powerful attack. We then see Godzilla charge up, Super Saiyan style, and releases two short but sharp bursts of thermonuclear energy, the second wave completely vaporizing Hedorah's body and two of his three heads. Healing factor and energy absorption. In 2014's Godzilla, we are told that Godzilla is from an era where the Earth was 10 times more radioactive than it is today, and a number of titans from that period of time consumed radiation as a source of food, even going as far as to move underground to absorb radiation directly from the Earth's core. It seems that radiation can also help him heal. After the Battle of San Francisco, Godzilla is seen to be fully healed and in prime form after absorbing radiation from a nearby atomic blast. After being severely injured battling Hedorah, the scientist Sarisawa sacrifices himself to detonate a nuclear warhead to help speed up Godzilla's healing process. After he retreats closer to the Earth's core to recharge, we see Godzilla is immediately revitalized and ready for combat. Intelligence. In both films, we see Godzilla study his opponents and learn their weaknesses, adapting his tactics to beat them. While battling the Mutos, he allows the male Muto to build up momentum and fly in close to attack him. And then he whips his tail around using the Muto's own momentum against him, smashing the Muto into a building, killing him. Godzilla observed that his atomic breath only seemed to push back the female Muto, but doesn't cause significant damage. He adapts his technique by forcing her mouth open and just letting rip with a barrage of atomic energy forced down the Muto's throat. When battling Hedorah, we see Godzilla use the water to his advantage, and he is superior in aquatic settings and is able to bite off one of Hedorah's heads. In their last showdown, Godzilla avoids using his atomic breath, but instead resorts to using a thermonuclear blast, which is far more effective. Clearly, Godzilla learns from his mistakes. Weaknesses. Short arms. As mentioned before, Godzilla has strong arms, but unfortunately they have a very short reach. The male Muto takes advantage of this and attacks Godzilla from above and behind, as Godzilla struggles to reach around and fend him off. When battling Hedorah, he tries to grapple with him, which initially proves successful. But due to the longer reach of Hedorah's necks, he is able to get around Godzilla's attack and wrap himself around Godzilla. This could be a challenge when battling Kong, who has a much longer reach, stronger and more flexible arms, and a mean right hook. Gills. Whilst these are an advantage for Godzilla in water, it seems that an attack focused on his gills are extremely painful, and Kong could take full advantage of this. Body builds. Because of the shape of his body, Godzilla finds it a bit more challenging to climb, as was seen in the Kong vs. Godzilla trailer, as he claws his way onto the carrier. Although this is an effective way to climb, it is slow, leaving Godzilla exposed to attacks for longer periods. Kong, who is more nimble, can use this to his advantage. Kong. In the right-hand corner of the ring, we have Kong, also known as King Kong. His current weight doesn't seem to have been revealed, or at least I couldn't find it. As of 1973, a baby Kong comes in at a mere 316 pounds and a meager height of 104 feet, which is about a quarter of Godzilla's height. However, it does seem like since we last saw him, he has grown exceptionally, as we see in the Godzilla vs. Kong trailer, where it appears that a fully erect adult Kong is actually taller than Lizard Boy, as he delivers an overhand right hook, causing King Croc to see stars. Kong is no slouch, as we saw, and it seems he might be a decent swimmer, because we see him dive off the carrier. Of course, that could just be because of the possibility of drowning seemed like a better option than assured vaporization. Let's delve into Kong's abilities that might give him an advantage in this fight. Intelligence. Being a primate, Kong demonstrates the ability to build and use tools effectively, often using his environment to his advantage. He incorporates handheld objects in his combat, giving him a big advantage. We see him use a chain to rip off a ship's propeller, and use it in a way a ninja from the Edo period would use a kusarigama, a chain weapon with a blade on the end. He uses the blade to hook his opponent, and pulls the chain to drag them in close. He then wraps the chain around his enemy's neck and yanks it, body slamming the Skull Devil to the ground. Kong is also seen using trees as weapons many times. In one instance, he hurls a tree like a javelin, taking out one of the helicopters. And in a later fight, he debranches a tree and uses it like a baseball bat to whack his opponent. He also wraps the chain and blade around his clenched fist, and uses them the way a ticked-off bouncer in front of a New York nightclub in the 1980s used a knuckle duster. In a fight with a large skull crawler, Kong struggles for a while, but cleverly finds a way to disembowel the creature, ending the threat. Hands. Like other primates, Kong has opposable thumbs, allowing him to grab and hold onto objects with relative ease. In the Kong vs. Godzilla trailer, he is seen holding onto an axe-like object, which he wields expertly, using it as both a defense tool and an offensive weapon. Since Godzilla has both claws and an extremely powerful bite, this axe will come in handy to protect Kong from Godzilla's bite, and also to replicate the cutting ability of Godzilla's teeth and claws. In fact, in the new trailer, we see one of Kong's ancestors swinging what appears to be some kind of flying lizard, using it as a melee weapon against another enemy. His hands will also come in handy whenever he needs to climb walls, mountains, or buildings, which can help keep him out of reach of many of Godzilla's attacks. Strength in combat. Kong is seen easily overpowering a mire squid by smashing its head with his foot and ripping off its tentacles with his teeth. And this strength has likely increased dramatically after his growth spurt since 1973. He has an incredibly powerful punch, which we see him use to incapacitate skull crawlers, even wrestling and pinning them to the ground by using sheer force. Like many primates, he is capable of lifting large masses, which he can direct towards, swing, or throw at enemy combatants. We see him launch objects as if they were spears, and he can do so with great accuracy. This will definitely come in useful when attacking Godzilla from long-range distances, while staying out of range of many of Godzilla's defensive abilities. In another battle with a skull crawler, Kong launches a massive boulder at it, and when the enemy manages to wrap its tongue around Kong's wrist, he uses his incredible strength to rip out its tongue and entrails with one firm but swift yank. At one point, he hits a skull crawler so hard it does a 360-degree backflip. In the Kong Godzilla trailer, he uses his sheer mass to shove Godzilla off the end of the carrier, and we see Godzilla topple over backwards into the ocean. That's one tough ape. Speed and agility. Much like many apes, Kong is extremely quick, allowing him to maneuver easily, dodging incoming takes, and launching surprising offensive strikes with great speed and precision. In both the Kong movie and the new trailer, we see him react quickly and strike at his opponents. As Godzilla climbs onto the carrier, he wastes no time in delivering a jaw-smashing right hook. Give Godzilla the fade. Kong can also leap great heights and distances, giving him some air superiority over Godzilla. In Skull Island, we see him run and jump from cliff to cliff, displaying various acrobatic abilities, including flips and backspins. He's also seen climbing up the sides of mountains with relative ease. Now imagine this ability being used in an area densely populated with skyscrapers. He'd have no trouble scaling the sides of buildings and jumping from building to building. It's honestly a great way to avoid Godzilla's attacks, or to reach Godzilla quickly in a fight. He is able to bob and weave like an expert boxer, grapple and roll like an experienced wrestler, and is basically capable of many flexible movements that primates can make, to both avoid and inflict damage. There's no better example of these than when he is stalked and taken by surprise in an attack from two skull crawlers. Despite being outnumbered, he's able to hold his own and take two enemies at once, dodging attacks and pivoting to attack. Lack of bodily armor. As Kong's species are primates, the outer layers of their bodies are fur and skin, unlike Godzilla, who has extremely thick scales, forming a natural body armor, allowing him to take a lot more physical damage. In Kong Skull Island, we see Kong flinch and recoil when fired on with projectiles, as they clearly seem to do some damage, whereas Godzilla is seen shrugging off fire from large artillery and even missiles. We see other instances of Kong's susceptibility to injury, when he tries to grab a helicopter and ends up slicing his hands on the propeller blades. As you can imagine, Godzilla will likely be able to use his teeth and claws to cause severe damage to Kong. Slow healing factor. As we've seen, Godzilla can heal rather rapidly, much like many reptiles. Kong, on the other hand, needs time to fully recover. In one scene in Skull Island, Kong touches a wound on his right arm and immediately flinches. Although this wound was sustained in a previous battle, it clearly has a long way to go before being fully healed. Susceptibility to fire and chemical attacks. In Kong Skull Island, we meet Lieutenant Colonel Preston Packard, a man defined by war, abandonment, and a strong desire for vengeance. In an attempt to destroy Kong, he sets a trap of napalm which Kong walks into and is set ablaze. Kong's fur and skin are severely scorched by it, and his whole right hand side is seen to be black and blistering. He eventually collapses from the damage caused by the attack. Napalm, a favorite weapon of American troops in Vietnam, can adhere to the skin even after ignition, causing horrible burns. Because napalm burns so hot, sight contact with the substance can result in second-degree burns, eventually causing scarring, as we can see on Kong's skin in the new trailer. This does raise the question of how he will fare against Godzilla's atomic breath. So after considering all the factors in favor and against both combatants, who would you put your money on? Thanks for watching and leave your comments below. If you like this video, don't forget to like and please subscribe. And feel free to check out some of my other videos.